The two insiders at GC Strategies worked with the NDP Liberal government to set the requirements of Arrive scam contracts, which GC Strategies then got. In other words, the process was rigged. The government massively overpaid for this $60 million glitchy app because the process was rigged. It was rigged so that GC Strategies got $20 million from taxpayers and did no actual work. After 8 years, it's clear that this Prime Minister's Arrive scam app is not worth the cost or the corruption. Why did the Prime Minister rig the process to pay insiders and punish taxpayers?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, again, my colleague can repeat a series of things that the facts don't bear out. What we can say, Mr. Speaker, is that the government takes extremely seriously the obligation of public servants to follow the contracting rules. That's exactly what the President of the Canadian Border Services Agency has assured me that she's doing. And she's also assured me that she's taken a series of corrective measures before today's Auditor General report and will continue to do whatever is required to ensure that taxpayers' money is always handled in the appropriate way.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, everything I said is directly in the Auditor General's report. So the Minister can't claim he's listening to that report and yet deny what I said. Well-connected insiders average $1,100 per day for working on this contract. Wow. After 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. The Prime Minister's Arrive scam process was clearly rigged, and now Canadians are out tens of millions of dollars when they can least afford it. Why did the Prime Minister rig the process to pay insiders and punish taxpayers?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Again, Mr. Speaker, when the Border Services Agency was made aware of allegations around inappropriate contracting practices, the appropriate authorities were called in. An internal audit was ordered, an audit, by the way, which is still in progress. And, Mr. Speaker, if people did something that was not appropriate or met a criminal standard, they will obviously be held to account. The government has been very clear. All of these processes to respect taxpayers' money are essential, and that's exactly what we're going to put into place.
The Honourable Member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
After 8 years, this NDP Liberal government is not worth the cost or the corruption. The Prime Minister's Arrive scam app is not worth the cost or the corruption. Today, the Auditor General revealed that well-connected insiders and consultants were making $1,100 per day, almost twice the inflated government rate. The auditor also found it disturbing that an app that should have cost $80,000 cost $60 million that we know of. Why did the Prime Minister rig the process to pay insiders and punish taxpayers?
The Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, we thank the Auditor General for her important report, which not only we took great gratitude to see this morning, but we have followed many of the recommendations that we find in that report, including improving evaluation requirements and work experience data, increasing record keeping on subcontracting work, and suspending authorities temporarily for task authorizations until we are confident that better procedures are not only put into place, but also better monitored.
That is nonsense, and you know it.
The Honourable Member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, please is an experienced member and understands that the people who have the floor should be talking. The Honourable Member from Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, 2 words for this government: jaw-dropping. Today, the Auditor General revealed that the Prime Minister paid almost $20 million to GC Strategies for his Arrive scam. This 2-person consulting company working out of their basement performed no actual IT work on the app. This amount is double what the government previously reported. Will the Prime Minister admit that he rigged the system to pay well-connected Liberal insiders while fleecing taxpayers?
Terrible, terrible. The Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a time of crisis, a responsible government has 2 responsibilities. First, to protect the health and safety of its citizens.
Yes,
Second,
exactly.
to ensure the efficiency of its internal system. What we know from COVID-19 is that a daily cost of $1 billion in economic cost to Canadians occurred every day. What we also know that hundreds of thousands of hundreds of people were dying every week. But at the same time, this is no excuse for the type of recommendation and finding that the Auditor General deposited today, and that's why we are going to continue to implement.
The honourable member from Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, as outlined by the Auditor General, the pandemic urgency can never justify corruption and oversight failures outlined in this report. The awarding of contractors favor GC Strategies, securing almost $20 million without competition. The CBSA's disregard for basic management practices compromised accountability, competition, and value for money. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost, crime, or corruption. Will fleeced Canadian taxpayers get their money back?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my colleague that a global pandemic and the rush to put in place a series of measures to protect the health and safety of Canadians does not exclude public servants from following the appropriate contracting rules that are in place. So, Mr. Speaker, we agree with the Auditor General when she says that those rules were not followed in a way that was acceptable. And, Mr. Speaker, as we've said, we're putting in place, and we already have put in place, a series of measures to ensure that this circumstance is never repeated again.
Check them out.
Deputy Eagle Creek.
Earlier today, we learned that the Prime Minister's Arrive Scam app was not worth the cost or the corruption. The Auditor General found a glaring disregard for mismanagement practices. The process was rigged from the beginning, which appears to be business as usual. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxpayers are paying a high price for Liberal insiders, and Canadians want answers. Will the NDP Liberal coalition come clean with Canadians or continue the cover-up?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Again, Mr. Speaker, far from cover-up, this government has cooperated with parliamentary inquiries that are looking into this matter. Our government proactively sent internal audit reviews to a parliamentary committee, and the Conservative chair decided not to share them with the members. So, Mr. Speaker, we have no lessons to take on acting in a transparent manner. We have said from the beginning that any allegations of inappropriate contracting practices need to face the most severe consequences. That's exactly what this government will do.
Check them out.
The honourable member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Well, this from the minister responsible for clam scam. After 8 years, it has never been clearer. This Prime Minister's Arrive Scan app is not worth the cost or the corruption. Rules were ignored, the government overpaid, and Canadians are kept in the dark. The system is so corrupt that only this Prime Minister could have thought it up. The rot starts at the top. This NDP Liberal government is trying to cover it up. Will this coalition allow the study of Arrive Scam to continue, or will they shut it down to keep their buddies safe?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague refers to the work of a parliamentary committee. As I said in the previous answer, our government has collaborated at all times with the parliamentary committee. Absolutely. Mr. Speaker, the President of the Border Services Agency, at my suggestion, sent a copy of the preliminary internal audit to the committee. The Conservative chair decided not to share it with the members because it might somehow prevent them from asking a series of partisan questions to bureaucrats who were there to appear before the committee. So, Mr. Speaker, we have been transparent and will continue to be at all times.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this government's incompetence, here's some more evidence that they're not worth the cost or the corruption. Get this, the ArriveCan app had a starting budget of $80,000 and it ended up costing over $60 million. That's 700 times more expensive than anticipated. Mr. Speaker, what was there in between $80,000 and $60 million? Well, bogus invoices paid out of the pockets of Canadian taxpayers. Can we find out who received all this money? This is a scandal of epic proportions. The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the scandal would have been if the Canadian government hadn't taken its responsibility of protecting the health and safety of Canadians, including in the riding of Lévis-Lobinière, where hundreds of people's jobs depended on effective, efficient, rapid transit between Canada and the United States. $1 billion in trade every day. But despite that, the Auditor General's recommendations this morning are cause for concern, and we will continue to work on them and address them over the upcoming weeks.